2026 is already being called the most mysterious and most important year in Apple's history. The company that for years kept its plans completely secret has unexpectedly found itself at the center of a flood of leaks. Insiders, analysts, and even former employees speaking anonymously all say the same thing. Apple is preparing the largest product line update in 20 years, and what these leaks hint at sounds like the beginning of an entirely new era. According to supply chain sources, Apple may unveil the first transparent iPhone in 2026, a device the company's engineers have reportedly worked on for more than 5 years, a project some call the most complex smartphone design in history, and which some analysts say could make transparent displays the next major trend that reshapes the mobile market. But that is only part of the mystery. Amid the rapid growth of the EV market, the long-dormant topic of Apple Car has resurfaced. After several years of silence, leaks suggest the company continues work on a prototype that reportedly includes a bespoke Apple Silicon chip for vehicles, and that an updated concept, already through preliminary road tests in California, could be shown in 2026. And of course, the most talked about leak is that Apple is allegedly preparing its first GPU for professionals and AI systems, discussed in expert circles as Apple GPU Pro, a device that could become the foundation of a new company strategy in artificial intelligence. Today, we've collected the most interesting leaks, rumors, and insider reports that have appeared in recent months. Unofficial information that is already generating global excitement and painting a picture of what may be coming. Welcome to the most complete investigation of all Apple 2026 leaks, from the transparent iPhone to the secret Apple Car and the mysterious GPU. In the tech world, a shift is brewing of a scale Apple has not felt since the death of Steve Jobs. Today, the company is facing the most serious challenge of recent decades, and the entire market is essentially asking one question: whether Apple can preserve its status as the most innovative corporation in the world, or whether the era of its dominance will remain in the past. According to outlets such as The Information, Bloomberg, and Financial Times, the topic of losing technological leadership is being raised inside Apple more often, something that seemed impossible just a couple of years ago. Growing competition has turned into real pressure. Samsung, Xiaomi, Huawei, and Oppo have all made such progress over the past 5 years that the gap between devices has almost disappeared. If the iPhone used to be the industry standard, the only point of reference, today many experts note that Apple no longer leads the industry. It moves alongside it. The company still has incredibly strong advantages: its ecosystem, device integration, audience trust, and a brand recognized anywhere on the planet. But the problem lies elsewhere. Innovation is becoming scarce. This is what undermines investor confidence, and analysts at Morgan Stanley, Wedbush, and Bernstein write about this more frequently. Despite the warm reception of the iPhone 17, the number of fans genuinely waiting for revolutions is shrinking. iPhones have stopped delivering the shock we saw in the Jobs era. Annual updates have become predictable. The lineup is refreshed mechanically, and true technological leaps are almost non-existent. This, according to the Wall Street Journal, is the reason for widespread rumors that Tim Cook may be pushed into retirement. Several insiders, including analysts who accurately predicted the launch of Apple Vision Pro, claim that the board of directors is dissatisfied with the company missing the AI wave. The AI race has become the defining competition of the decade, but Apple seems to be standing aside. While Google, Microsoft, Meta, OpenAI, and even Samsung are building their AI platforms, Apple appears to be an observer. The company has presented its strategy only in fragments, and its attempts to integrate AI features into devices have looked less like breakthroughs and more like catch-up moves. Insiders at The Information report that the failure of the Vision Pro campaign became the final point of tension, increasing pressure on leadership. Vision Pro was expected to open a new era, but instead it became Apple's most controversial release in years. Its sales did not collapse entirely, but the impact was nothing like what the company promised. Against this backdrop, Apple, according to supply chain sources, made one of its most unexpected decisions of the past decade. approving the development of a device that may become both the company's greatest risk and its greatest chance. For the first time in many years, Apple is working on a product that is not an update of an existing line, but a completely new category: a graphic or fully transparent iPhone designed to merge the real and digital worlds, creating a new level of interaction between humans and artificial intelligence. Several sources, including display suppliers from Korea and Taiwan, as well as engineers involved in AR and AI projects, confirmed to Nikkei Asia that Apple is developing a device combining elements of transparent displays, holographic visualization, and a next-generation AI assistant. Internally, the device is known under the codename Crystal Project, and leadership already views it as having the potential to become a second 2007 moment, the launch of the first iPhone. According to Bloomberg insiders, the design and engineering teams are guided by a concept in which Apple's future smartphone becomes not just a gadget, but a personal AI assistant capable of understanding the user, anticipating needs, interacting with the environment, recognizing emotions, analyzing surrounding objects, and integrating into daily life more deeply than any device today. Building on technologies developed for Apple Vision and several classified AR interface projects, Apple is trying to create a phone that serves as a window into augmented reality without bulky headsets. The idea is for the device to look like a light, aesthetic block that may be partially or fully transparent and capable of projecting interface elements as if they float in the air using holographic effects. Exact details of the exterior remain classified, and Apple is rigorously filtering leaks. But several sources claim the company is testing prototypes with transparent panels, advanced microdisplays, and a new generation of A-series chips optimized for AI operations. The main intrigue, however, is positioning. If development succeeds, Tim Cook may decide to release the device as a separate line alongside the traditional iPhone. But if the product is truly revolutionary, it could appear as the iPhone 18 or even be shifted closer to a symbolic milestone, the iPhone 20. All of this carries enormous risks. Engineers interviewed by Digitimes and The Information warn that transparent displays, holographic projections, and embedded AI require solving dozens of technological challenges, such as light absorption, matrix protection, energy efficiency, heat management, privacy, and security. Even for Apple, this would be one of the most difficult projects in the company's history. This is why most analysts believe a real release is unlikely before 2028, a date that aligns perfectly with the debut of the anniversary iPhone 20. However, several sources report that Apple may show the first public prototypes as early as 2026 to demonstrate to investors, the market, and fans that the company can still surprise the world. With competitor pressure escalating, this move seems logical. Chinese giants like Xiaomi and Huawei have already unveiled transparent TVs and are experimenting with AR elements. Samsung is investing billions in AI smartphones, and Google is working on a Pixel with a fully cloud-based intelligence core. If Apple remains an observer, the company's leadership will collapse faster than anyone expects. The question now is straightforward. Will Apple create a new revolution or finally surrender its position? We will see the answer in the coming years. But one thing is certain, the transparent or graphic iPhone project has become a matter of survival for Apple. And if the insiders are correct, we are in for the biggest premiere of the decade. Inside the company, there is a growing understanding that it must amaze the world again, change the rules again, become a leader again instead of following others. This is why the leadership is considering a scenario in which test prototypes of the transparent iPhone will be shown to a closed group of journalists and investors as early as 2026 in a special private event similar to what Apple did before announcing the first Apple Watch. It will not be a full release, but it will send a signal to the entire market. We are coming back. Several sources even suggest that the presentation may take place at the new Apple campus, where space has already been allocated for showcasing future AR technologies. There they may demonstrate how the transparent iPhone interacts with space, how it builds holograms, how the AI analyzes objects around it. This demonstration, if it happens, will become a key moment for the entire industry. And if the bet succeeds, the world will witness the revolution futurists have been predicting for the past 20 years. It seems that one of the loudest tech projects of the decade, which the world had already buried, is suddenly returning. Several unnamed sources familiar with internal correspondence among Apple's leadership told multiple reputable outlets, including The Information, Nikkei Asia, and analysts from Bloomberg Intelligence, that Apple is seriously preparing to resume work on its long-running project, Apple Car. And the surprising part is not that Apple has once again decided to try itself in the automotive industry, but that the internal arguments for reopening this Pandora's box have become too numerous, and one of them turned out to be decisive: the rapid and frighteningly successful rise of Xiaomi in the electric vehicle market. When Cupertino saw the numbers, real, commercial, verifiable results of the Chinese tech giant, the company formed a clear understanding: if Apple once again ignores the trend and refuses to enter the market now, then in the next 10 years it risks becoming a supplier of accessories for those who create the future. Over the past 1.5 years, Xiaomi has turned its automotive division into one of the boldest and fastest-growing forces in the new global auto market. It all began with the high-profile launch of the SU7, the company's first full-fledged electric sedan, which Chinese media called a Tesla Model 3 killer even before the car went on sale. But the effect went far deeper than loud headlines. SU7 became a viral product, instantly capturing the attention of users, investors, and the press. According to Caixin, more than 100,000 pre-orders were collected within the first 24 hours after the presentation, and by the end of the second month, total orders exceeded 320,000 units, setting an absolute record for any first-generation Chinese EV. But the real sensation is the financial performance. According to analysts at Goldman Sachs China division, in just the first half of the year, Xiaomi earned more than $4.5 billion from its automotive division, and most of that came from the SU7 and its senior version SU7 Max, a high-speed modification that accelerates to 100 kilometers per hour in seconds, and in some tests, outperforms early series Porsche Taycan. SU7 became not just a car, but proof that a modern tech company can build vehicles on the level of global automotive giants, faster, cheaper, more flexibly, and at a far more aggressive pace. It was precisely Xiaomi's success that became a warning signal Apple could not ignore. When a Chinese company once dismissed as a phone copycat suddenly broke into the most demanding and complex industry in the world and began pushing competitors out of their own field, red lights went on in Cupertino. According to Bloomberg, Apple's top managers were forced to hold a separate series of closed-door meetings to assess the scale of the threat. And the conclusion was harsh. If Apple does not appear in the automotive market, then in a few years, the title of #1 consumer electronics company will go to other players. Inside the company, a heavy period of stagnation has long been felt. No revolutionary products after AirPods, the smartphone market hitting a ceiling, and brand fans increasingly demanding not another speaker moved 3 millimeters to the side, but a real future. Big, bold, ambitious. And now, according to insiders, Apple is ready to deliver that future. The Apple Car project, frozen amid internal disagreements, staffing reshuffles, and the loss of several key engineers, has finally received the green light. The internal name of the project remains secret, but sources from The Information report that Apple plans to completely reform the team, bring back former specialists, attract those who previously worked on Tesla's autopilot, and expand the staff by several thousand people. One of the sources claims that the atmosphere inside Apple now resembles the early days of the first iPhone's development, a mix of panic, enthusiasm, and the realization that the company can no longer afford a mistake. However, even if Apple returns to the project in early 2026, a fully mass-produced car will appear only several years later, and this is the key strategic miscalculation that many experts already call the loss of the most valuable resource: time. While Tesla, Xiaomi, BYD, NIO, and dozens of other companies have already built factories, logistics, service networks, their own battery technologies, and established autonomous driving architectures. Apple is only preparing to take a seat at the table. It arrived at 5 or even 10 years too late. But there is one important detail. Apple remains Apple. The company knows how to arrive late, but always with a bang, just like it entered the smartphone market, where Nokia, Motorola, and BlackBerry already dominated, but crushed them with a single product. Just like it entered the headphone market and displaced dozens of brands. And in Cupertino, they still believe they can repeat this trick. Insiders note that the new Apple car will no longer be aimed at full Level 5 autonomy, as previously envisioned. After a series of failures related to software, Apple decided to abandon the Level 5 concept and focus on something more realistic. A smart, autonomous, but not fully self-driving car. According to Nikkei Asia, Apple is considering a modular electric motor architecture, a two-tier autopilot system based on Apple Silicon, and integration with future generations of Vision Pro and Vision Air. In other words, Apple Car may become not just a vehicle, but a part of an ecosystem in which the car is an extension of the iPhone and an integral part of the user's digital life. And this is already potentially dangerous for competitors who cannot create such deep integration. Meanwhile, Xiaomi continues to pressure the market from all sides. SU7 became the beginning of a new lineup. SUVs, sports versions, and models with expanded autonomous fleet control are already being tested, capable of integrating into the smart city infrastructure of China. And this fact, as the Wall Street Journal notes, has become another irritant for Apple, because the Chinese are now one step ahead even in areas that just a few years ago were considered the domain of Western tech companies. Nevertheless, despite all the difficulties, delays, and the lack of its own manufacturing lines, Apple appears to have made its choice. The company can no longer afford to stand aside and watch others divide a billion-dollar market that 10 years ago seemed too risky. Yes, Apple lost time, lost part of its team, lost its technological edge, but as Morgan Stanley experts note, the electric vehicle market is still in the early stages of formation, and a company with such capital, such reputation, and such a fan base still has a chance to change the game. And now, as the first leaks appear, as the press hints at meetings between Tim Cook and the heads of several major auto component giants, as analysts begin revising their Apple forecasts for 2026 to 2030, it becomes clear. It looks like Apple is returning to the automotive business. Not for innovation, not for experimentation, but for survival and for the attempt to reclaim the status of the world's leading tech force. The company stayed in the shadows for too long, postponed the inevitable for too long, and now, inspired by Xiaomi's success, alarmed by its scale, and realizing that the window of opportunity is closing rapidly, Apple is doing what it should have done long ago, preparing to enter the fight. And perhaps this fight will become its loudest comeback in the last 20 years. In the tech industry, a new stage of covert competition is beginning, one that until recently was discussed only in whispers. According to several authoritative sources, including journalists from The Information, analysts from TrendForce, and insiders close to the company's engineering divisions, Apple is finally emerging from a prolonged period of technological stagnation and is preparing one of the most aggressive and large-scale responses to NVIDIA in its history. What seemed impossible just a few years ago, the idea that Apple would attempt to challenge the absolute monopolist in the world of AI chips, is now becoming reality. And if the leaks that have been circulating for a week in the closed chats of suppliers are accurate, Apple has indeed begun developing an entirely new lineup of its own AI processors, capable not only of reducing the company's critical dependence on NVIDIA, but also of restoring its status as a technological leader, a position Apple has been gradually losing in recent years. Paradoxical, but true, the company that for many years set the rhythm of the entire industry became one of those that slept through the beginning of the AI revolution. While Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, and most importantly NVIDIA were building the infrastructure of the new digital world, Apple continued to focus on design, device optimization, and the gradual evolution of its ecosystem, avoiding open declarations about its AI ambitions. But patience has run out exactly now. at the moment when NVIDIA is at the peak of its power, when its chips have effectively become the new oil of the 21st century, and demand is so enormous that the company must allocate supply years in advance, choosing who gets computing power and who gets refused. To understand the scale of the challenge, it is enough to look at a simple fact. Today's NVIDIA chips, H100, H200, and the upcoming Blackwell lineup, are the heart of the entire global AI infrastructure. They train the largest neural networks and operate in the data centers of Amazon, Google, Meta, Tesla, in research laboratories, and in government institutions. Why NVIDIA? Because their architecture, developed more than 10 years ago, turned out to be the ideal combination of parallel computing, high energy efficiency, and support for the most advanced software platforms such as CUDA, without which no serious AI project can function today. In the industry, they even joke that CUDA is the new operating system of artificial intelligence, and whoever controls it controls the future of machine learning. Simply put, NVIDIA built not just a chip, but a closed ecosystem where hardware, software, tools, drivers, and standards are so tightly integrated that it is almost impossible to escape this matrix. That is why companies from startups to giants like Amazon are essentially lining up for NVIDIA GPUs, understanding that there are simply no alternatives. And at this very moment, when NVIDIA has become an entire technological civilization, Apple decided to do what the most far-sighted analysts told it 5 years ago, to create its own specialized AI chips. But why did Apple need to take such a risky step at all? The reason is simple: the company began to lose the race. In the era of the iPhone X, Apple was considered the gold standard of innovation, but over the past 2 years, according to sources at the Financial Times, internal discussions within Cupertino have increasingly focused on the idea that the company has lost its flagship status as the industry's technological trendsetter. The AI industry is developing faster than traditional mobile devices, and now every manufacturer is trying to integrate neural networks into cameras, processors, operating systems, voice assistants, workflows, and enterprise services. But Apple, due to its closed architecture and cautious strategy, found itself in the position of a follower. They fell behind not just by a year or two, they fell out of the technological ideology that defines the future. Insiders claim that within the company, there is even a term moment Intel, an analogy to the period when Intel slept through an architectural transition and lost its dominance. Apple has infrastructure, money, and capabilities, but it does not have its own H100. And this, according to analysts at Bernstein, became the critical turning point after which the company's leadership decided to launch a new secret initiative internally known under the codename Project Q. According to the leaks, this project is the foundation of Apple's future independence from NVIDIA and the restoration of its technological superiority. According to Bloomberg, Apple has already created several prototypes of its own AI processors, each designed for processing large language models, computer vision systems, generative models, and on-device local AI. Some chips will be used in Apple's data centers to train its own models, while others will be integrated into future iPhone, iPad, and Mac devices, turning Apple hardware into autonomous computing stations with local neural networks. Sources familiar with the process claim that these chips differ from classic mobile Apple Silicon SoCs because they include a dedicated architectural subsystem entirely focused on AI operations. Essentially, Apple is creating its own version of a mini H100 optimized for the closed iOS and macOS ecosystem. Journalists at Wired, citing supply chain sources, report that Apple is actively hiring engineers who previously worked at AMD, Google DeepMind, and even former NVIDIA employees specializing in GPU architecture. Moreover, according to analysts at DigiTimes, Apple has already held negotiations with TSMC about allocating dedicated production lines for future Apple AI chips, which indicates that the company is not planning to merely experiment, but to launch mass production. But the key question remains: why is Apple doing all this right now? The answer, according to experts from McKinsey and Gartner, lies in the fact that the world is changing rapidly. AI is becoming the foundation of everything, from smartphone cameras to autonomous vehicles, from medicine to the military industry, from education to business. And if Apple continues relying on solutions made by others, it risks becoming a beautiful but dependent brand, giving up its place to Nvidia, Google, and Microsoft, which are rapidly shaping the new technological architecture of the planet. No one wants to be a hostage of someone else's ecosystem, especially Apple, a company that has always built everything internally. But can Apple really challenge Nvidia? Nvidia controls the world not only with hardware, but with habit. But if the world gets an alternative, even one, it could change everything. That is why CNBC insiders believe that Apple is preparing the biggest announcement of the past 10 years. The unveiling of a new AI platform and the first generation of its own data center AI processors. And if this happens, the beginning of a new technological war will become inevitable. Apple versus Nvidia. Innovation versus monopoly. The AI revolution versus traditional GPU architecture. The world is on the verge of the biggest power shift since the arrival of the iPhone, and if Apple has truly awakened, the coming years may become the hottest in the history of Silicon Valley. Will Apple manage to defeat Nvidia? No one knows, but the fact that Apple has finally decided to fight for its future is confirmed by dozens of leaks, contracts, and engineering reshuffles. And if even half of what insiders are talking about is true, 2026 may become the beginning of a new era, an era in which Apple will once again be not the one catching up, but the one setting the rules of the game, and it all starts right now. In the tech industry, moments that can truly be called transformative are rare. Even rarer are those moments that come from companies long established at the top of the market, considered too conservative to surprise the world again. But in recent weeks, something has been happening in California at Apple Park that tech analysts are already calling the most mysterious and potentially the biggest shift since the first iPhone. Under increasing investor pressure, slowing innovation, and growing fan dissatisfaction, the company appears to be preparing for a technological leap that could completely reshape the personal device market. Leaks have surfaced, claiming Apple is working on a device already being called the first true technological miracle of the last decade, a holographic iPad capable of projecting a volumetric image into space without glasses, lenses, headsets, or additional equipment. And that is not all. According to several sources, the device will be built on an entirely new Apple-developed embedded AI architecture created without relying on external companies. If this is confirmed, the tech world may indeed be facing a revolution on the scale of 2007. The first rumors appeared only a few days ago, unexpectedly, quietly, with almost no discussion. It began with a short mention in Mark Gurman's Bloomberg column, known for highly accurate predictions about Apple's future products. He hinted that the Cupertino Corporation was working on a device meant to define its technological identity for the next decade. Industry chats immediately began speculating that this could be something far beyond a simple modification of the iPad Pro or a new version of the Vision Pro. Soon, more reports emerged. The information, citing 2 Apple employees involved in early research projects, stated that a small internal team was developing a system for spatial display without a headset. Around the same time, unusual activity appeared in Asian supply chains. Several component suppliers reported orders unlike anything Apple currently manufactures. Then, within just 24 hours, the major analytics agency, Canalys, released a report that for the first time mentioned the term Apple Spatial Tablet, a name that had never appeared publicly. There were no presentations, no press releases, no hints, but insiders insisted the prototype was real and personally overseen by Tim Cook, an absolutely exceptional situation at Apple. The CEO almost never supervises prototypes directly. If he does, it means the project is of strategic importance for the entire company. All of this noise emerged at a moment when Apple was under the strongest pressure it had faced in the past decade. Even though iPhone 17 sales exceeded forecasts, analysts note that the world is genuinely tired of iPhones. The devices are faster, the camera's better, the material's more premium, but there has been no real revolution. The iPhone has turned into an annual iteration, slightly updated design, a new chip, a better battery. The global smartphone market is stagnating, innovation is slowing, and users feel the company is maintaining stability rather than creating the future. Apple events have lost the wow factor that was Steve Jobs' signature, and investors have begun asking how long the company can maintain its status as a technological leader if its key product no longer changes the rules of the game. Against this backdrop, Apple's board of directors began discussing the need for transformation. Several outlets, including the Financial Times, reported that some influential shareholders have floated the idea of finding a new leader, preferably a more aggressive technological visionary. Tim Cook, a figure of stability, reliability, and careful business management, may no longer be the kind of leader the future demands. And only the rumors that he personally took charge of developing the holographic tablet made the situation take on entirely new colors. And if this device really comes out and turns out to be revolutionary, Cook's role in Apple's history will be reinterpreted. But what exactly is this mysterious holographic iPad? At the moment, there is almost no precise information, no mock-ups, no diagrams, no specifications, and insiders emphasize that the new prototype is being developed under an absolutely closed regime that is considered extreme even by Apple's standards. And according to one source, engineers are working in separate rooms under constant control, with data stored on autonomous servers not connected to the corporate network, which indicates that the company understands the scale of the risk in case of a leak. But even under such secrecy, some details have begun to surface. The first being that the device will use a volumetric light engine based on technology Apple refined after its experiments with Vision Pro. And this is not a classic holographic display in the sci-fi sense where the image floats fully in the air, but something far more advanced than just a 3D effect on a flat screen. And according to sources, the image will form in front of the display with a depth of up to 20 to 30 centimeters, meaning the user will be able to interact with virtual objects without wearing a headset, a concept already being called an unobvious successor to Vision Pro. The second being that the device will receive a new type of sensors capable of tracking the position of the eyes, hands, and head in real time, which is necessary to create the illusion of depth. The system will understand where the user is and adjust the image to natural perception. And analysts assume that Apple may use an updated version of its LiDAR sensors, long used in iPhone and iPad Pro. But here their functions will be greatly expanded. And the third, the most important and most discussed, is that the new iPad will become the first Apple device with an autonomous built-in AI architecture fully developed inside the company. And Nikkei Asia recently reported that Apple accelerated work on its own neural chips aimed at local AI processing. And against the backdrop of rapid growth of OpenAI, Google Gemini, Nvidia, and others, Apple had long remained on the sidelines, and users complained that the company had seemingly slept through the AI revolution. But insiders claim that Apple was simply developing its own approach focused not on cloud AI models, but on highly efficient local solutions that run directly on the device. And the holographic iPad will be the first to receive this chip, likely under the name A-Series Holographic Neural Engine, though the name is not officially confirmed. Yet such an ambitious project comes with huge risks, the main one being the shadow hanging over the company after the commercial failure of Apple Vision Pro. And despite its technological excellence, the device faced criticism, being too expensive, too heavy, too limited in battery life, with almost no content for the system, developers in no hurry to create apps, and consumers not understanding why they needed a headset costing several $1,000s. And the ad campaign did not compare to early Apple products. Too abstract, too conceptual, without a clear message about what Vision Pro does better than other devices, resulting in low sales, cancellation of part of the production orders, and a sense that Apple misjudged the timing of the release. And this is why the holographic iPad is the company's chance to fix the situation, as the device promises to be simple to use, without anything to wear on the head, without straps or battery packs, without discomfort, and corporate analysts call it the next natural step between traditional tablets and spatial computers. So this may become a device for the mass market, not for tech enthusiasts, but for ordinary users who want magic without complexity. But the real question is whether users are ready to trust Apple again, as competitors are breathing down the company's neck, with Samsung and Huawei actively developing neural network smartphones, NVIDIA exploring new formats of consumer devices, and Chinese manufacturers experimenting with AR screens. And if Apple does not present something truly breakthrough in the near future, it risks losing what makes it Apple, the status of a company that sets the rules of the game. In August 2025, when most tech outlets were busy discussing another round of interim iPhone updates and scandals around component supplies for Vision Pro 3, a barely noticeable entry appeared in the US Patent Office Bulletin. Apple had received a patent for an electronic device with a glass body and a flexible display capable of switching its viewing side when flipped. The official wording sounded dry and unclear, almost technical, and for that reason the news passed unnoticed by most media. But this patent, as sources in several major analytical agencies now claim, may become a turning point in the company's strategic course. At first glance, the document described only a variation of the long-discussed transparent display concept, but specialists familiar with Apple's internal developments insist that this patent is part of a much broader program that Cupertino has given priority status. According to journalists at Nikkei Asia, The Information, and researchers from Counterpoint Research, Apple has spent the past 1.5 years forming a closed initiative focused on creating a new generation of fully transparent devices, iPhone, iPad, and even MacBook, built in glass bodies where the boundaries between screen, enclosure, and interface disappear entirely. Several employees previously working in the display engineering group who agreed to speak anonymously say that the first iteration of Apple's transparent computer is already undergoing final tests and may be introduced in 2026 if engineers manage to complete calibration of the hybrid display module that allows the device to adapt to any ambient lighting. The turning point lies in the fact that Apple at the official level almost never speaks about radical innovation. Over the past 10 years, the company has regularly updated existing device lines, improved cameras, processors, and materials, but no fundamental breakthroughs comparable to the 2007 iPhone or the 2010 iPad have occurred. Bloomberg intelligence analysts note that the stagnation effect has become noticeable even within Apple's own ecosystem. Yes, sales are growing, services are breaking records, capitalization is impressive, but users are increasingly expressing disappointment over the lack of something truly new. And here a paradox emerges. Apple has an enormous reserve of trust and one of the strongest brands on the planet. But if the company does not present something truly revolutionary in the coming years, it risks losing its status as a technological leader, giving way to companies rapidly rising on the wave of artificial intelligence. Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, all of them are actively integrating AI into their products, investing billions of dollars into language models and distributed computing. Apple, however, according to MIT Technology Review, has effectively fallen out of the race. Its solutions in AI are perceived by the market as late, and its proprietary models lag behind competitors in power and flexibility. That is why, as sources at Fast Company and Wired claim, Apple leadership is increasingly discussing the need for a technological comeback, a presentation of product lines that will make the world talk about the company again as an industry flagship, rather than a stable corporation capable only of updating existing products. And in this logic, transparent devices look like an almost perfect tool. Several of today's trends converge in one point. Demand for revolutionary form factors is growing. Users are tired of monotonous rectangular electronics, and tech giants are searching for ways to stand out from one another. Such products are precisely what could change the perception of Apple and return the company to the popularity of the era when any of its announcements became a global event. According to data available to journalists at 9to5 Mac and Tech Radar, the most likely candidate for a 2026 announcement is a transparent Mac. This is not a concept or a distant plan, but a real physical device that exists in Apple's laboratories and has already gone through 3 generations of prototypes. One display technology expert who wished to remain anonymous said that Apple is testing a hybrid OLED module based on a new type of glass substrate matrix. This panel can display images with varying depth and transparency depending on the viewing angle and the intensity of external lighting. Rumors say the device will feature a 14-inch transparent display with a full blackout mode, triple-layer glare protection, and an integrated microlens system that allows the user to see the image only at a specific angle, creating a controlled privacy effect. Some sources claim that the interior will use an experimental M5T series chip, a modified version of the upcoming Apple M5 optimized for multi-layer transparent matrices. Engineers are also testing a miniature continuum cooling engine, a completely silent thermal circulation module that uses liquid helium properties to dissipate heat. Foreign analysts emphasize that Apple is close to creating a device that could potentially become the most discussed laptop of the decade. According to specialists from display supply chain consultants, the transparent Mac is currently undergoing commercial viability evaluation, and the company must decide in the coming months whether the product is ready for mass production. Apple is now running a series of final stress tests, calibrating panel transparency during abrupt lighting changes, checking the glass chassis for resistance to micro-deformations, and assessing the hybrid display's power consumption at maximum brightness. All of this indicates serious intent. No one outside the closed labs knows exactly what the final product will look like, but leaks provide several hints. A glass monolith, no visible bezels, nearly imperceptible edges, a touch panel built directly into the lower section of the body, and dual-side display technology that allows the device to switch the active screen side depending on spatial orientation. Some experts believe Apple may introduce a spatial transparency mode for the first time, allowing the user to interact simultaneously with physical objects and a virtual interface. If these rumors prove true, the transparent Mac will become the first device where an AR interface is built directly into the body itself without specialized glasses or headsets. Against this backdrop, 2026 becomes potentially decisive for Apple. It will be a moment of truth, a year in which the company will either regain its status as a technological leader or fully enter a phase of comfortable stagnation, relying on existing product lines and services. Too much is at stake: user trust, internal team morale, the reputation of an innovative brand, and the ability to compete in an era of rapid AI development. Apple is in a position where it needs not just a new product, it needs a new chapter in its corporate history, a new starting point after which the company will no longer seem like it is catching up but leading again. And judging by insider activity, leaks, patents, and how often the closed transparent Mac is mentioned in expert circles, Cupertino clearly understands that the moment for a comeback is now, and delaying is no longer an option. That is why many analysts believe that if the transparent Mac really appears in 2026, it will not just be a product, it will be a statement. And what is especially notable is that, according to several experts from IDC's European division, the very structure of the rumors surrounding the transparent Mac is very different from the usual information waves that typically accompany Apple's upcoming devices. Normally, leaks appear chaotically. One blogger posts a spy photo, another shares a questionable chassis sketch, others publish renders based on guesses. However, in the case of the transparent computer, information is arriving in an unusually synchronized and, as analysts note, too tidy manner. This creates the impression that Apple is deliberately allowing controlled leaks, testing market reactions, and preparing the audience for a product that does not officially exist yet. More and more analysts agree that Apple is entering a new cycle, one that should restore the company's reputation as a visionary and give the world a sense of technological wonder that has been missing for the past 10 years. For many years, the question of when Apple would make its first foldable iPhone remained one of the most discussed topics in the tech world, but the company stayed silent, which made every leak feel like a fragment of a larger hidden picture. And today, when leading sources such as Bloomberg, The Information, ET News, and display market analysts from DSCC are simultaneously reporting that Apple has accelerated development of a foldable device expected to launch in 2026, it becomes clear that the company is preparing a product capable not just of catching up with the market, but of changing the competitive rules themselves. The industry is sliding toward a new bifurcation point, and Apple, as always, wants to enter it not first, but best. According to all major insiders, the first foldable iPhone already exists in the form of engineering prototypes that are being tested inside the company's labs and at supply chain partners. According to ET News, Apple is working on two form factors at once: a vertical flip-style device similar to the Galaxy Z Flip, and a horizontal fold-style device that opens into a small tablet. Bloomberg clarifies that both directions are being developed in parallel, because Apple views the foldable iPhone not simply as another smartphone, but as a logical extension of the ecosystem, where the mobile device becomes the interaction hub for visionOS and future AR products. And although Apple does not publicly confirm the project, the volume of leaks over the past 2 years shows that this development has long passed the experimental stage. The main challenge Apple is trying to solve is reliability. Unlike Android manufacturers, who can afford early adoption of technologies that are not fully polished, Apple historically does not release products that could trigger even the smallest quality-related scandal. This is why, as the information reports, the company repeatedly postponed its internal development schedules, because the flexible OLED panels supplied by Samsung Display and LG Display did not meet Apple's requirements for durability, crease visibility, and resistance to temperature deformation. Insiders from Bloomberg report that Apple wants to achieve an extremely shallow crease, so small that it becomes visually unnoticeable in normal use. And this is one reason the company is developing its own multi-point stress distribution method for flexible panels. At the same time, according to DSCC, Apple is testing a new hinge design that uses a complex multi-line load distribution system meant to prevent excessive wear in the central folding area. The company is also researching materials that perform better under constant mechanical stress, which explains Apple's collaboration with LG on flexible glass composites that could replace current UTG solutions used in Samsung's foldable devices. However, the technical side is only half the story. The bigger intrigue around the foldable iPhone lies in how Apple intends to integrate it into its ecosystem. According to Bloomberg and Mark Gurman, the foldable iPhone will not simply be a regular iPhone with a flexible display. Instead, Apple sees it as the first step toward an entirely new device category: hybrids of iPhone and iPad that can change their usage scenarios depending on the mode they are in. When folded, it is a classic compact iPhone, and when unfolded, a miniature tablet capable of running an adapted version of iPadOS or a new layer that merges elements of both the mobile and tablet systems. This strategy aligns with the direction Apple has been moving in recent years. visionOS, iPadOS, and macOS are becoming increasingly connected, and a foldable device could become the bridge between them. Apple is already testing how the foldable iPhone interacts with Vision Pro. According to the information, some internal prototypes can use the unfolded layout as a portable workspace display for visionOS, turning the phone into an extension of the AR ecosystem. This means the foldable iPhone not only introduces a new form factor, but also builds the foundation for integrated computing of the future, where Apple devices operate as a single organism. Another major question is what the design of the foldable iPhone might be. Leaks from Nikkei Asia and MacRumors indicate that Apple is leaning toward a device with an unfolded screen between 7.4 to 8 inches, roughly the size of an iPad mini. This is also supported by the supply chain. LG Display and Samsung Display have already received Apple's requests for panels in this size range. At the same time, the device's thickness in folded mode must be smaller than current Android foldables. Apple treats this as a critical element of the user experience. The company does not want the device to feel like two smartphones stacked together, which is why it is developing a new segmented battery architecture that reduces overall thickness. According to Barclays analysts, Apple is also experimenting with a magnetic mechanism to keep both halves firmly aligned, making the device feel solid when closed rather than hollow in the center, a problem seen in some competitors. As for the name, insiders agree that Apple has not made a final decision. The The most discussed options are iPhone Flip and iPhone Fold. These names have appeared in supplier reports, but there is no direct confirmation that Apple has finalized them. However, the company's naming patterns suggest that a vertical form factor would most likely be called Flip, and a horizontal one, Fold. Several Bloomberg sources also note that Apple wants to distance the device from the regular lineup and is considering a new series designation to emphasize the transition into a new category. The impact of a foldable iPhone on the market could be far greater than it appears. Even though Samsung, Huawei, and Motorola have been selling foldables for years, the segment remains niche, about 1.5 to 2% of the global smartphone market. The main reason is the lack of a quality standard that sets a mass market trend. This is exactly what Apple does best. Whenever the company enters a new category, it expands the audience dramatically. This happened with tablets, smartwatches, and wireless earbuds. Bloomberg reports that the release of a foldable iPhone could increase the market 3 to 4 times within 2 years, because Apple users are more inclined to buy expensive next-generation devices, and developers will immediately adapt their apps. A crucial factor is integration with Apple's ecosystem. The foldable iPhone will be able to run professional apps in unfolded mode, for example Final Cut, Logic, or full-scale graphic editors, which will let it compete with tablets. According to IDC, this could reshape the market. Future Apple foldables may partially replace the iPad mini and even entry-level iPad Air models. And while Vision Pro is an essential part of Apple's long-term future, mass adoption of AR devices will take several years. The foldable iPhone becomes an intermediate step. It expands smartphone usage scenarios, creates a new level of user engagement, and paves the way for devices that can change shape not only when opened, but dynamically, as described in several Apple patents. In this sense, the foldable iPhone is not just Apple's response to Samsung. It is the architectural platform of the future. It connects Apple's mobile ecosystem with its tablet and AR ecosystems, creates a new market, reshapes how users perceive the form factor, and forces the entire industry to rethink its development strategies. And if the leaks turn out to be true, 2026 will mark the moment when Apple once again intervenes in the evolution of mobile devices and does what it does best: not invent a device first, but reinvent the category so thoroughly that it has to be rewritten from scratch.